Notification tells him that now he's become a character in the book called The Knight of. Our main character is a normal Korean man named Kim Soo-ho, but in this world he goes by Lloyd Frontera. He was a regular old civil engineering student, but now he aims to get his family out of debt. This story revolves around this money-loving goblin's never-ending hunger for cash and his inadvertent changing of the world. Some years prior, our main character wakes up in a field, greeted by multiple pop-up messages. They inform him that he had been granted a random wish by an unknown entity called the Absolute. The notification tells him that now he's become a character in the book called The Knight of Blood and Iron, and it's coincidentally the same book Kim had been reading the night before. The weird system wishes him luck, and Kim is really confused, but he pieces two and two together and concludes that he has possessed somebody from a different world, like those web novel cliches. He wonders why he's waking up face down on a dirt road though, and even more so why his mouth was stuck feeling weird. The system makes sure to clown on him, but this makes Kim angry, so he slaps the alert pop-up. He questions if this whole thing is a dream and wonders whose body he could have possibly taken over. But suddenly his thought gets interrupted by somebody calling him Master Lloyd. It's his assistant Javier, the actual protagonist of the book he was in. Javier currently is an unknown knight of the Frontera barony, but in the future he is going to become a renowned swordsman. Kim again puts two and two together and realizes he's become Lloyd Frontera, the hooligan of the Frontera family. He says this out loud and Javier smirks, finding it amusing how he's self-aware at least. They go inside where Javier explains why he was in that state. It turns out Lloyd got super drunk and ended up destroying the bar he was in, and he passed out on the way back to the mansion. He further explains how he was sent by Lloyd's father because he wouldn't want his stupid son to die on the road. That was way too pitiful a death even for him. Lloyd is appalled upon hearing this, but he notices the floor of his room is cold, and he notes how if only he had a heated ondel, a Korean underfloor heating system, he could sleep better. Javier announces his leave, but before he goes, Lloyd asks him if his family has a lot of debt, to which Javier only answers with, "What a strange thing to say." Javier makes his leave, and Lloyd comments how he didn't actually need to ask that question, because he already knew the answer. Because just last night he had read the last chapter of the book he was currently in, so he knows what events will follow. First, his mother and father will fall victim to a vile con man, and they would lose all their assets, leading them to commit unalive. This will lead Lloyd to becoming a worthless beggar and drunkard, leading him to drink so much that he coughs up blood and dies. He is furious because he will just be left with the same miserable life he had back on Earth. The next day comes, and Lloyd is met by his mother, questioning him about the event that took place at the bar last night. She begs him to go apologize to the bar's owner, and even though he technically didn't do it, Lloyd agrees to do so. He is met with shocked faces as they can't believe he would actually agree to apologize. The scene shifts to Lloyd and Javier making their way to the bar, but during this trip he notices that not only do the villagers actively avoid him, but they actually detest him. He even sees a little kid getting scolded for looking in his direction. Seeing this, he concludes that his first plan of action should be to get rid of his bad image so he can live a peaceful, worry-free life as the heir to the Baron. He checks to see if he at least got a skill, and it turns out he actually has two, one called Human Scum and the other called the Rowdy Drunk. He is furious seeing these useless skills and accidentally goes past the bar he was in last night, which prompts Javier to be suspicious of him and notes how Lloyd had seemed off since last night, as if he was a completely different person. Once in the bar, he bows his head and earnestly apologizes for his behavior, but because of Lloyd's track record, the bar owner doesn't believe him, and he trembles in fear. He tries to be a little more like his previous self, coming off a little more rude, but this only leads to more fear from the owner. Once he was done apologizing, he asked Javier why the owner didn't seem happy at all, even though he apologized earnestly, to which Javier responds that all the things that Lloyd had destroyed were purchased with the bar owner's hard work, and a simple apology would not be enough to suffice. Javier further explains that the owner's mother is still sick from the late winter, and that combined with Lloyd's delinquency must have been really hard for the owner. Lloyd notes in his head that it's only natural that his mother would get sick because there isn't a sufficient heating system in this world, and here is when he has an epiphany. With his background in civil engineering and the multiple hands-on experiences he has in construction, he resolves to solve this issue in this new world to clear up his family's debt. He tells Javier that they would be going back to the bar and announces it would be his first order. Suddenly a new notification appears and states how a new RP system has been activated, and he can now gain RP or relationship points by improving relationships with key characters in the story. Lloyd doesn't really understand but gets a general gist of the system, and he looks over at Javier to see that his approval rating is abysmal, being that it's a -30. He tries to raise it by rizzing Javier up and complimenting his looks, but this empty flattery backfires and his approval rating actually goes down even further. Seeing how he made it even worse, he resolves to leave it for later. They make it to the bar, and here Lloyd outlines a contract to the owner that says he would build something so substantial it would equate to all the property he had damaged. But as you probably guessed, the bar owner doesn't buy it at all and has absolutely no trust in Lloyd. So Lloyd pulls out his forbidden strategy and resorts back to his hooligan image, proceeding to threaten the owner into signing the contract. This ends up working, scaring the poor man into the deal, and Lloyd grimaces having gotten his first order. Lloyd and Javier go outside of the bar, and Javier is upset at the fact that he had forced the pub owner to sign the contract and questions if Lloyd is just finding new ways to cause trouble. Lloyd, without even batting an eye, gives Javier a quick psychology lesson in cognitive distortion, saying how due to his track record of bad behaviors, if he suddenly acted nice and genuine, there would be more dissonance and confusion from the other party. Javier is astonished at how articulate Lloyd is and wonders if he's always been such a smooth talker. Lloyd mentions that he just wants to make the bar owner and his mother smile, and this also shocks Javier, but in his head Lloyd only wants this because it will become the catalyst to his money-making plan. Lloyd starts by digging the foundation and constructing the frame of the building with lumber from his father's warehouse. He finishes the walls by filling them up with clay he got from a river, and here he collapses from the exhaustion. Javier interrupts him and comments how he didn't take that long. In his head, he is again amazed at how the hooligan of the Frontera family is actually going to honor his contract with the bar owner. Lloyd stands up trembling from the exhaustion but resolves to keep going. He picks up an axe and tries to swing it, to which he stumbles and almost injures himself before Javier steps in and tells him he'll help out. He throws the logs in the air and swiftly cuts them into perfect planks, leaving Lloyd amazed at the power of the future master swordsman. But instead of thanking him, Lloyd orders him to do even more work, to which Javier gets super irritated. He coaxes him into doing it because he knows Javier is curious as to what Lloyd is planning, and if he wants to see what the end result looks like, he should help him to get the work done faster. Thus, with Javier's help, they work hard and the construction is finally finished. The owner and his mother are shocked at the heated room that Lloyd had created, and they thank him from the bottom of their hearts. Javier is at a loss for words, seeing that Lloyd's promise of making the owner and his mother smile was upheld, and he is so impressed that his approval rating goes up by 2 points. Lloyd monologues how with this project he is at a total loss in terms of profits, but it's all going according to plan because it's merely a model house that's going to be used as promotion. He showcases this new heating room to the townspeople, but even though they really like the room, they are super hesitant in signing a contract with the hooligan Lloyd. He even tries using his previous douchebag coercive techniques, but it still doesn't work. Suddenly, a person calls his name, and it turns out to be his father, Arcos Frontera, and he is seen questioning what he's doing. glowing. Lloyd notes how his approval rating for him is at a -20, and the scene shifts to them at the manor eating dinner. His father cuts straight to the point and asks Lloyd what he is up to this time, and Lloyd, giving his best hooligan impression, answers bluntly. His father doesn't want him lying and deceiving the villagers, but Lloyd reassures him and he gets up to take his leave. But before he goes, his father asks if he's doing this all because of their family's financial situation. He says to Lloyd that he doesn't have to worry about it and he will get them out of the trouble himself, so he doesn't have to get involved. But Lloyd had heard those exact words before from his father back in Korea and calls him a liar in his head because he knows things are not okay. As he is leaving the dining room, he tells his father not to give up because he wouldn't be giving up either. The scene shifts to earlier in the day when Lloyd was checking out his new RP system. A pop-up explains to him that now he can use the points he acquired to gain new abilities. The system scans Lloyd to see if he has any skills that can transfer from his previous life, and it makes an underhanded comment about how he's more competent than he actually looks. The scan is complete and 2 skills are found based on his existing knowledge that can be obtained. One is called Basic Surveying, which allows him to outline an area without the use of a GPS, and another skill called Basic Design, which allows him to draft basic blueprints more efficiently. Even though he gets these useful skills, he still wants something that can assist him like heavy machinery. It turns out there's such a thing as summoning, and you can summon a creature that can help you much like heavy machinery can. But to get a summon, he would need to acquire a lot more relationship points, and so he resolves to create better relations with key characters. Thus, back in the present, he sees how loan sharks have come to his residence and they proceed to harass his father. Eavesdropping their conversation, Lloyd has a wicked smile as he deems this the perfect opportunity to raise his approval rating from his father. They threaten him by stating how if the payments for the loans are delayed any further, they will be forced to take action. The bigger meatloaf loan shark even puts a disgusting offer on the table and states how he knows a nice place where he could sell his wife and the other ladies of the house to get some quick money. Lloyd's father is beyond appalled at his proposal, but here is when Lloyd makes his grand entrance. The meatloaf man orders him to leave, deeming it no place for a rascal to be, but Lloyd counters and orders him to show a warrant. The loan sharks don't understand what he's saying, but Lloyd recites one of the provisions in the royal law stating how every noble has a right to protect their interest and assets, and that an entry to a noble's residence without probable reason is considered trespassing. The sharks are startled and angrily state how they've never heard of such a thing, to which Lloyd says, okay, F around and find out. He calls Javier in the room and orders him to cut off the trespasser's arm. Javier, without a word, pulls out his sword, and the loan sharks are terrified beyond belief, cursing at him as they run out of the manor. His father goes pale and demands why he did that, but before he can get another word off, Lloyd slams a sack full of money on the table. He says to his father that this should be enough to cover a big part of this month's interest payments. His father is reluctant and says he would not be taking money from the people like this, and that extorting the funds from his people is not what he wants to do. But this is when Javier steps in and reassures him, stating how he will keep an eye on him to make sure this money is earned and not extorted. The Baron, seeing how serious Javier is, opts to trust him, and this is when Lloyd and Javier make their leave. As they're walking down the halls, Javier questions how the ignorant Lloyd knew about such a law, to which Lloyd responds he just happened to pick it up somewhere. This isn't exactly a lie, however, because he had actually gotten it from Javier. In the future of the book, Javier had used this exact law to thwart the same 2 loan sharks as they wanted to dig up the bodies of the dead Baron for cash. He ended up killing them, but the courts found him not guilty because of the exact provision. Lloyd states how knowing the contents of the story is a huge benefit, and that due to his previous actions, he should be getting a pop-up any second. His predictions turn out to be right, as a pop-up informs him that his approval rating from his father had increased by 6, and that now he has a total of 60 RP points, enough to get a summon. He makes his way outside where he surveys his surroundings to make sure he's alone. Here he uses 50 relationship points to buy a summon, and he's astounded by the magic circle that appears before him. But he's quickly disappointed to see how tiny it is, and soon a cute hamster pops out of it. Lloyd can't believe it and bites his lip in frustration as he thinks he got a dud of a summon. The hamster, upon hearing this, is devastated and tries to signal to Lloyd that he is indeed useful and proceeds to spit out an instruction manual. The manual states how the cute hamster's name is Podong, and it should be given lots of love, and that feeding the included sunflower seeds will cause it to change size drastically. The red one will grow the hamster to gigantic proportion, and the blue one will shrink it to a smaller size. Lloyd is curious and asks Podong how big he can actually get, but the hamster only responds with its name. But funnily enough, Lloyd actually understands him somehow. He proceeds to feed Podong a red sunflower seed as he was instructed, and the hamster starts glowing. Suddenly, he gets hit in the face with so much force, he gets thrown backwards. Once Lloyd came to, he was shocked to see a massive Podong that is easily over 30 feet tall. The hamster gives him a condescending look like, I told you so, and uses a skill called Dig to create a massive trench in the ground. Then he uses a skill called Packing Dirt, which allows him to flatten the ground. Seeing how similar Podong is to actual heavy equipment, Lloyd is ecstatic and says he won the jackpot. As he is walking down the mansion, he thinks how it would be very suspicious if he just whipped out a massive hamster out of nowhere. So he resolves to keep a book of summoning on him and claim to just be a summoning master to divert the suspicion. He pats himself on the back for his genius level solution and states how now he will need to figure out what to do with the labor aspect of this massive construction project. The next day, he gathers the Frontera barony soldiers to help with the labor shortage, but he realizes how unmotivated and useless they are, and he can't believe that they're getting paid to essentially do nothing. But he lets out a grin as he will now put them to work to make up for it. Lloyd orders the soldiers to listen, and he states how with their help he will turn the estate's finances around. He orders them to move some clay to the construction site where he will make the heated rooms, but the soldiers all look in disgust as they don't want to do menial labor for the rascal of the family. Here's when the senior knight of the Frontera barony, called Newman, shows up to confront him, but this is exactly what Lloyd had predicted. It turns out that in this land there are 3 influential knights: Newman, somebody called Bayern who is below him, and finally Javier, the main character of the novel. It turns out that in the story, when the estate falls into ruin, Javier and Bayern remain loyal until the very end, but Newman was the first to betray the Baron. He ends up selling information on the Baron to Cons, which leaves the Frontera barony in huge debt. Seeing how he already knows the future of this novel, Lloyd resolves to change this outcome. He taunts Newman and asks why he confronted him, to which he responds he won't allow his men to cover themselves in dirt for meaningless menial labor. Lloyd rebukes, saying how he has his father's permission to do so, but the knight questions how he fooled his lord and believes that he's just using his men for personal gain. Lloyd responds that's exactly what I'm doing, and provokes him further by saying he'll give him a beatdown on top of it. Newman, upon hearing this, grits his teeth in rage, almost having a vein pop out of his neck. Lloyd further provokes him by throwing dirt in his face, to which the soldiers all stand shocked that he would do such a thing. Newman trembles in anger with bloodshot eyes as he questions Lloyd if he knows what he's done. Lloyd pretends to not hear what he said and proposes they just simply fight it out. He spins his shovel in his hand and points it directly at the knight, challenging him to a duel. Newman agrees to it and vows to make him regret it. How would this fight end, and will Lloyd be able to change his terrible image? Well, find out in the next video.